Hello, everyone, and welcome to Scholars Hub at Home. I'm Heather Auden, Director of Alumni Engagement. Thank you for joining us for today's session titled Mentors, Peers, and the Hidden Networks of Learning. Before we get to that topic, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the land that I am on. Because we may not be gathered in the same place, the land I'm about to acknowledge might not be the territory you are on. Please take the responsibility to acknowledge the traditional territory you are on. As a member of the York University community, I recognize that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships with the territories upon which York University campuses are located that precede the establishment of York University. York University acknowledges its presence on the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations. The area known as Takaranto has been caretaken by the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat. It is now home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. This territory is subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and care for the Great Lakes region. Now, before we get started, we would like to conduct a quick poll before the session begins. The question is, how would you rate your knowledge regarding the topic of today's presentation? You should see that poll up on your screen now. And I'll give everyone a moment to respond. Okay, thank you for your responses. This helps our speaker learn a little bit more about the audience. Before we get going, if you do need help with the Zoom webinar, feel free to click on the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and enter your question. Our team is there and ready to help you. And that same button may be used to submit questions for our guest speaker to answer during the Q&A period. So you can answer or enter questions at any time during the presentation as they come up. And then at the end, we will discuss them. Please note that all of your questions and comments are visible to our panelists and staff working behind the scenes, so we ask that you keep your comments relevant and respectful. Okay, with that, I would now like to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Budworth. Marie-Hélène Budworth is an associate professor in organizational behavior and human resource management. Her program of research is focused on individual identity and development, rooted in theories from positive psychology. Much of her work explores how people learn, acquire knowledge, make choices, and negotiate with one another. Her most recent research looks at well-being and belonging in the workplace. She's currently serving on the editorial boards of Human Resource Management, Human Resource Management Review, Organizational Dynamics, Human Resource Development Quarterly, and Career Development International. With that, please welcome Dr. Budworth.
Thank you so much, Heather. It's great to be here today, everybody. Great to see that so many have joined. I will get started. Thanks again, Heather. Let me share my slides here and introduce myself just in terms of what I'm going to share today and get us started. I'm going to speak for about 20 minutes, and then as Heather indicated, we'll move into a question and answer. So feel free to enter your questions as we go along so that we can look at them at the end. So yes, today we're going to talk about mentors, peers, and the hidden networks of learning. And this topic, I'm going to present it kind of in a broad fashion. So a broader sense of the research rather than one particular study that I've done, although I might talk about particular work that I've done. In this area, I look at a fair amount at the efficacy of feedback. So when we give people feedback, what are the conditions under which it can actually help improve behavior, and it can help change and develop people. But I want to talk about learning generally at work. In particular, I think this is an interesting conversation because there's a bit of a paradox here in that organizations design really complex systems, such as feedback systems or performance management systems or training in order to support learning. Yet most of the learning, a lot of the learning that takes place in organizations happens informally. So I want to talk about ways in which we can improve these informal practices, even from our own perspective as individuals. How can I, as a person at work, as a person in the world, ensure that I am doing things that maximize my ability to learn from others? And I've mentioned peers and mentors here. This would apply to any relationship that you might engage in. So let's get started by talking about networks. I have two topic areas that I'm going to cover broadly. Connections and the quality of those connections. I have some takeaways at the end of each section and some big takeaways at the end. So hopefully there'll be, you'll walk away with some ideas to think about and maybe some questions and some comments about some of the ideas. So let's talk about connections to others and why they're important. And in order to do so, I'm going to start with kind of a fun example. And this, I love using this example because it's something that many of us know a lot about. Or many of us have seen this example. Maybe you haven't, but if you have, the 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon game has, maybe some of you have played this at dinner parties or with friends. And there's this notion that you can play this game where you can name anybody who's in the International Movie Database. So anybody who has been in a movie who's been alive at the same time as Kevin Bacon. And you can get back to Kevin Bacon in 6 steps or less. Right, so I'll give you an example in order to illustrate the game. The game goes like this. So if I were to say Zach Galifianakis, you would have to tell me, how do I get from Zach Galifianakis back to Kevin Bacon? Well, Zach Galifianakis has a Kevin Bacon number of 2 because Zach Galifianakis was in Birdman with Michael Keaton. And then Michael Keaton and Kevin Bacon appeared in She's Having a Baby. So it's 2 steps between Zach Galifianakis and Kevin Bacon. Let's take a very different actor. Zach Galifianakis is a comedian. What about an action star like Sylvester Stallone? Again, the Bacon number is 2. Sylvester Stallone was in Expendables with David Joseph Martinez, who was in X-Men First Class with Kevin Bacon. Again, 2. So there is this popular idea that we are all connected to each other. And, we've heard this popular idea of 6 degrees of separation. But it's an interesting fact that this game works so well for Kevin Bacon. And there's a particular reason for that. The reason this game works so well for Kevin Bacon is because of the diversity of body of work that Kevin Bacon has done. So Kevin Bacon has been in action movies, he's been in comedies, he's been in dramas, he's been the good guy and the bad guy, he's been in sitcoms, he was in the movie, he's been in sitcoms. I can't remember the name of the sitcom at the moment, but he's been in such a broad range of things that he's connected to a whole lot of people. So it's really easy to get around the database of actors and get back to Kevin Bacon. This game doesn't work as well for somebody like Tom Cruise, let's say, who has made Mission Impossible, I think it's 7 times, 8 times, I'm not sure. Right? So let's think about that as a way of structuring our insight into connections and how connections work. Right? I want to talk for a moment about the idea of our networks in the workplace. So when we are thinking about who we're connected to, we are connected to people in lots of different ways. Think about these connections as resources or as ways to gain insight, places to learn, knowledge. All of these people that surround us are opportunities for us to gain some sort of opinion, insight, to develop ourselves in some way, to develop them, right? There's a lot that can be given and gained through connection with others. Now, we all know this because many of us have strong ties who we lean on quite heavily. So these are the people that you might use as a sounding board when you have a problem, or you might go to regularly to get advice from. And these strong ties are very important, certainly, but there's also something called weak ties when we're talking about social networks. And those weak ties, if you look at this little diagram that I have on the page here, this is actually an illustration of an actual social network of a person. If you look at some of the ties, they exist on the periphery, and they are not where there's no density, and they're kind of connected through other people. It is through those weak ties, the longer the line, the weaker the tie. So through those weak ties and those secondary ties, that is where the novel information, that is where the new insights are. the person I spend the most of my time with, we know the same things. We have the same experiences. So seeking out these weak ties can be really beneficial for helping us to learn and develop. Um, there's a series of studies that in careers that actually demonstrate that at the very beginning of your careers, the most important ties that you have are those weak ties, because those are where the new opportunities are. As you develop in your career and you become more senior in roles, those strong ties actually become increasingly important because you need those trusted sounding boards. So, we could go on for some time about the construction of a social network, but I think for me, this is a useful visual or a useful thing to keep in mind when we're thinking about developing our contacts or developing ways in which we can learn from others. Seek out all kinds of experiences and all kinds of connections. And so if we could bring some takeaways from this particular section, it would be develop your network, but be Kevin Bacon, right? Do a whole bunch of different things and see the value in doing those different things. Also, the last point that I want to make here is think about the value that you can add to your network. So there is another group of research. This is done by Adam Grant and some of his colleagues at a university in Pennsylvania, where they look at givers and takers. So people who give into their network or people who just consistently take from others in terms of either knowledge or insight or assistance or support or guidance or mentoring or all of these things. And it shows that those who are most successful are those people who are freely giving into their network, because there is a human tendency that when we give, it will be reciprocated to us. So giving is actually a really great way to ensure that you are building the types of connections that are useful, that are meaningful, and that people find valuable. And when you do that, you will gain the most from your connections with others. But let's build on this idea about how to build useful connections, how to build connections that are meaningful. There is a wonderful body of research that's initiated by a colleague at Michigan State University named Jane Dutton, who has come up with a concept called high quality connections. So this is a really useful way of thinking about what are the types of exchanges that I hope to have with others. And what she has posited is that a brief positive interaction can make people feel seen and valued. It doesn't necessarily have to be a close relationship or a long-term relationship. We're talking about these connections or contact points or exchanges we have with people in the world around us. These types of small exchanges become significant because they foster a sense of connection. They build on this sense of positive regard, and they can be easily cultivated, right? So think about times where you've had a really good exchange with somebody, not necessarily a friend, not a close colleague, but you've had a really good exchange. And it is through that really good exchange that you leave feeling a bit uplifted, a bit better about your work, a little bit energized. So that is what Jane is talking about when she's talking about high quality connections. Now, the interesting thing about high quality connections, they matter. And why do they matter? They matter because they can broaden our thinking. They reduce negative affect, so make us feel better. They enhance our self-image. They make us feel better about ourselves. They improve both psychological and physiological health. And to today's point, they increase learning. So these are the effects we found. So how do we do this? How do we have high quality connections? Well, thankfully, there are 4 key drivers of high quality connections. So when you are going out into the world and thinking about how you can engage with others, how you can have conversations with others that will both develop them and develop you, provide opportunities for knowledge sharing. If you've been asked to be a mentor and you're looking for, how do I do this? How do I do this thing? You're a new supervisor or you're a manager and you're wondering, how can I do a better job of navigating these relationships that I'm in with these individuals? Well, here are Jane Dutton's, the 4 tips that come from high quality connections. The 4 tips are that you will have respectful engagement. And that just means that you're present in the conversation, you're paying attention, and you're listening purposefully to the person you're talking to. So you're not doing what I do often when you walk into the house and say, how's everybody doing? And you look at your phone as you're listening to the answer. You're not doing that. You're actually having a a point of contact where you are listening to and being attentive of the person that you're speaking with. You're building, there's a little bit of trust in the exchange. So again, we're not talking about relationships. We are not talking about these deep, meaningful exchanges, but there can be trust even in the types of exchanges we have with our colleagues, we have with our mentors, we have with our peers. And that just means that a trusting relationship is one where people understand that I'm being authentic, I'm being myself. I'm not trying to hide anything or put on some sort of air. I'm also following through. So if I say I will do something, I do it. I'm sharing my own insights, sharing an experience that I had. Well, I know that you're up against this problem, or you're trying to solve this issue. Something similar happened to me, and you telling that story. So sharing of yourself is an act that can engender trust. All of these types of communications or contacts can build these high quality connections. Another interesting one is contact that is task enabling. So this just means that through our exchange, I help you in some way to move forward on something that you're working on, right? I provide a little nugget of information, a little bit of encouragement, a bit of motivation, a new resource, a new connection, right? So anything that I can do to push your work along or push your efforts along will be a high quality exchange, right? So think about that. Like every time, I'm sure you've had interactions with people where somebody provides you with an insight or provides you with some sort of way of reframing a problem, and you're like, oh, thank goodness, now I can go back to my desk and get working on it. And that provides some warmth between the two of you. So aim to be task enabling. And lastly, being playful, right? So research does tell us there is a great deal of value in being lighthearted, in adding a bit of positive playfulness to an exchange, a little joke, a little sharing of something that provides a little bit of lightheartedness, right? So these are the ways in which we can create high quality connections. So when you're encountering people, can you be authentic? Can you be supportive? Can you help them get their work done? Can you be a little bit playful? Can you create the types of, so we're going to try and create connections, and now we're going to try and create meaningful ones. I want to put one last idea out there before I close off and open it up to questions. And that is the idea of being intentional about the types of connections that we are making. So when we're talking about the network and the being Kevin Bacon, that's one way of thinking about being deliberate, right? Like building these, making sure that you're actively trying to be diverse in the types of exchanges that you have, the types of places that you go and people that you interact with, looking beyond your first order connections to make sure you're accessing those people who are on the other side of those connections. But I think this idea of interpersonal crafting is very interesting. So this comes from a larger theory called job crafting. And what interpersonal crafting is, it's the proactive and intentional process of shaping one's work or life to improve relationships, to improve the interactions with others. It involves taking steps to make interactions more meaningful, more cooperative, and constructive. So in essence, it's being strategic and purposeful. So I have I like to illustrate it using this particular example. I have a colleague who's at another university in Southern Ontario here in a B school, and she has this practice at the end of every term. She sits down, she takes a pen and paper, and she spends some time thinking, this last term, who did I call on in class the most? Who did I speak to in between lecture times, like in the breaks? Who showed up to my office hours? And she's trying to figure out who's missing, right? Who am I not engaging? Who am I not reaching? Right? She's trying to be intentional and in the process of shaping the types of exchanges she has, so that she can be a little bit more available to a broader range of people. So think about, who do you talk to? Who do you share your insights with? Who do you go to for advice? Can you broaden that circle? Can you diversify that circle? Right. So the key ideas from this second session are: be present, help others, have a little fun, and seek out difference. Make sure that you're not just staying in your comfort zone, but you're stretching yourself because that's where the new insights are. That's where the new information is. That's where the new ideas are. Now, always like to leave with some actions you can take immediately, some things that you can think about. And they would be, in the case of this talk, expand your network, strengthen your existing connections, and be deliberate about creating new ones, right? Like learning is not only about what you know, it's about who you learn with and through. So where's your hidden network? What can you do to access it? Right, so I'm going to pause here and move to the question and answer period. So I'll stop my share and invite Heather back.
Great. Thank you very much, Marie-Helen, for such a timely and informative talk. And it's something that we think a lot about in the Alumni Engagement office, as we have a huge network of alumni, many of who are joining us today, and we are often thinking about ways to nurture those connections. And I'll share a little bit later ways we can do that with alumni. But before I get to that, we do have a few questions. So I will start with the first one. As workplaces become more hybrid and technology driven, how might we need to rethink mentorship and peer learning to ensure these hidden networks still thrive?
Yeah. So when it comes to the fact that we don't have those impromptu opportunities to engage with each other, right? So we are no longer meeting in the hallway or in the elevator on the way up to work. And to be honest, I also think we're not really recognizing people when we are together, right? So like I'm having a conversation with you now online, and then we might meet in a meeting 6 months from now, and I have less familiarity with you because this exchange was not in person. So I think it creates more of a challenge. I just think it makes it harder, and I think it means that we have to work harder, right? So I think for the most part, you are able to create meaningful connections online. It isn't well. I think the broader world tells us we can. We see lots of that happening with younger generations and with people who are more familiar with online platforms. But it just means that the advice of being deliberate becomes just not only being deliberate about who you're interacting with, but making efforts to find ways to do that. So that might mean that if a new person starts in your department, making sure that you set up a loose meeting with them. If there are opportunities for in-person, that you actually take advantage of them, right? Those are really easy to back out of. But really seeing them not as it's a waste of time to make the commute. Everyone's like, maybe it is on a daily basis, and we've proven we can do the work from these hybrid circumstances. But maybe there are times when I know my whole team is going in, it's a good idea to be a part of that, right? So like being a little bit more deliberate and thinking about the connections as part of the work you have to do, and not because it's not going to happen in this impromptu way anymore to the same extent.
Absolutely. And I did forget to mention to everybody, please do use the Q&A function. I see some people are using it, but if you have a question that you would like answered, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. So we do have a question from a participant who wants to thank you for your presentation, and said that, like many things, having high quality conversation and interpersonal crafting are skills that need to be learned and practiced. With this lens in mind, what are some strategies, training, learning, a learning circle, et cetera, that can support this type of self-development?
Yeah, I think the answer is in your question, right? They are skills that need to be practiced. I think that you've also, to underscore that it's a skill, right? So it's not a capacity or an intellect. It is not something that's static. It is something that can be developed over time. So it is something that we can, if you put some effort into it, you can actually do it. And so when we think about developing skills, there are kind of 4 points that we really think about most of the time. This is connected to social learning theory and helping people feel confident about the skills they develop. And so those steps are that we practice. So practice first in safe ways so that we can feel confident, right? So try something that you're confident with or that you can feel good about first, get some early wins under your belt, and then stretch yourself a little bit more and do things that are a little bit more difficult. Second is looking for somebody who does it well that you think you can emulate. So somebody that is a good example for you. So how do they do it? What, they don't have to know them and you don't have to ask permission. Like it could just be an observation, right? Like you go like, how does this person enter a room before meetings and have conversations with people? Like kind of trying to pay attention to some really good examples. Another would be to get feedback. So asking people you trust, like, when you see me do this, are there things that I could be doing differently? Are there things that do you have a sense of how people are experiencing me, and so on? And the last one has to do with sometimes this activity can make us feel anxious. And when we have activities that can make us feel anxious, the best way to get rid of that anxiety is to actually do the thing, right? So it's a little bit different from the first one, because the first one you're trying to build a skill. The second one, you're just trying to get rid of the anxiety. So just do it over and over and over again, right? Ski down the hill as many times as you can. And eventually it doesn't feel as daunting at the top.
Yep, like exposing yourself over and over again to that. Yeah. That's great advice. Thank you. We have another question, and again, want to compliment a great presentation. And wondering if you can talk about the importance of building strong connections via weak ties and network-driven hiring for new grads and early career types. It's a very challenging job market, along with a lot of AI perfected applications hitting job postings. So it can make reaching out, building trust and credibility, and looking to get referrals into hiring channels that much more important. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in the old world, before resumes were vetted by AI and things, and there were, when things were depersonalized, even in the old day, even before that, weak ties were always your best access to early employment opportunities, right? So there's such a flat landscape in your early career, because you're coming in with people with very similar credentials, right? You're coming with people similar university degrees, similar experiences. You're just starting out. The differentiator really is figuring out, how can I have a connection with the person who's making the decision, or how can I have a connection with somebody who is a trusted advisor of the person making the decision? How can I get my foot in the door? And that is through your weak ties, right? So that is your weak ties can be simply an exercise in talking to people that you know very well and asking who they know, right? So I'm looking for a job in HR in these industries. Do you happen to know anybody in the environment who I could have a conversation with? And don't ask for much from the conversation. Ask for, can I just talk to them about their experiences or gather insights? Can I have an information conversation? I no expectation that anything's going to happen, but it is through those touch points that you create warmth, that you create connection, so that, and people generally want to help one another, especially a young person just coming out of university. So the more people you can put yourself in front of and create these positive exchanges and connections, the more opportunity you will become visible to, right? So there are more opportunities that you'll start to see. There might be the potential for that person to refer you to another person, start building your network. And I'm saying this in a series of steps, not to imply that it's a simple series of steps. I think it's really important to note that getting that first job, the foot into the career that you're hoping for, is a lot of work. But the types of things we're talking about today is a big part of that work.
Absolutely. Okay. Our next question is, some people find they are more productive, for example, in work or in school, by using positive self-talk and self-motivation. Can this be another option for a hidden network for learning?
Oh, I think I have to hear more about that question, but I'm really excited to hear somebody talk about positive self-talk. One of the very first studies I did as a grad student was about positive self-talk. And it was actually positive self-talk for job search, interestingly. So it was I have a study published with a group of women in Turkey, in Istanbul, around re-entry to the workforce after having raised families, and along with job search skill training, we train them in positive self-talk. Verbal self-guidance is what we called it, and the idea was to increase their confidence in the face of what are real barriers to reemployment, and it actually made a fairly significant difference. So the question here was linking positive self-talk to. Can you remind me, Heather?
It's about using positive self-talk and self-motivation as an option for a hidden network for learning. I can ask maybe the person if they can add more clarification, they can add it to the Q&A.
Yeah.
The way I'm interpreting it is I'm not sure if this is it, but getting the sort of the courage to
Yeah,
go out
that's how
and do it.
that's how I hear it too. So I think it's related to the point that was made earlier around development, right? That if you are anxious about this or you're uncomfortable, so I've, I haven't called what we're talking about networking today, but essentially, a lot of what we're talking about is networking. And the word networking makes people really uncomfortable. I'm hoping to reframe it as kind of these making meaningful contacts with people that benefit you, benefit them, and that have the opportunity to really kind of build out your resources and your potential to make a difference in the world that you live in. But that aside, it's still anxiety provoking, and I get that. So the positive self-talk is certainly a useful skill that you can use in the exercise of trying to do more of it, right? So we talked about exposure and doing as much of it as you can. Positive self-talk is the act of coming up with the phrases so understanding that you have these negative thoughts that likely come into your head as soon as you try, like you're about to walk into a room and talk to 6 new people. You likely have these negative thoughts that immediately come into your head, like, I'm going to be awkward, I'll have nothing to say, no one's going to like me. Those are not helpful thoughts right before you walk into the room. So trying to change the talk that you're having with yourself and have pre-prepared statements that you repeat to yourself before you walk in, right? I'm an interesting person. I have really, I have a lot to offer. I have really good ideas, and so on and so on. So I can see it as helping to build you up as you seek out the types of interactions and exchanges that you hope to have.
Great, thank you. And our guest did confirm that is what they have found to be extremely useful in work and school. I'm going to share a comment that's not a question, but somebody shared that they work in the mental health sector and find that adults as well as youth are struggling with this in-person type dialogue.
Yeah.
This one's an interesting one, is what are ways a mentee or the more junior individual in a relationship can provide value to someone more advanced in their career, potential mentor in a networking relationship? So how can they make it mutually beneficial?
That's great. That's a great question. And it's great that you're thinking about that as a mentee. Like, that is a wonderful thing to enter the relationship with, right? Like, you want, as we talked about earlier, you want to add value wherever you can, right? Because that's how things come back to you. And that's how, to be honest, it just feels good. So how can I add value to this relationship? Well, there's a fair amount of research that demonstrates the ways in which mentees add value to mentors. So the mentor-mentee is fairly obvious. Like, I'll just outline that quickly. Mentors give to mentees in ways where they help provide guidance, practical guidance that helps guide their career. They help them understand the politics of the place and the profession, how things work here. But they also can provide access to opportunities, open doors, recommend you when you're not in the room with them. So they have like tangible resources and knowledge that they can offer. In the other direction, the ways in which mentors benefit. So first of all, we are in the last 20 years, the workplace has kind of shifted to a space where younger people have a whole skill set that is far more developed than older people with regards to one thing, with regards to use of technology and proficiency and comfort with technology, right? So there's always that. There is that. As an academic, I have to say that one of the things that I rely on my grad students for, who would be my mentees, using these advanced data systems to analyze data, right? So I had the stuff that I was using when I was younger, and now it's like this, the growth is exponential. So it's very useful to have people who have quick proficiency with that and can provide insight, guidance, advice, tips. But beyond the kind of those practical ways, mentees provide mentors with opportunities to practice their leadership skills. So here's a way in which the mentor is new to this too, quite likely, and this is a growth opportunity in their own career. So just by virtue of being on their side and in their corner, you are providing them with some opportunity to be a leader in some ways. Another thing that is happening with the mentee-mentor relationship is that you are now a resource to them. Right? So as they build out their career, you're one of their trusted people. They know if they want to get something done, if they want somebody on their side, if they want to work on a project, they know that they can bring you in and that you are going to be aligned with them. So expressing that you're there to support them, that you're happy to work on projects with them, that you're happy to do kind of the grunt work can sometimes be a really good asset to a mentor.
Great. Another thank you for the great presentation, and a comment that alumni can do a lot for new grads and pay it forward by circulating or reposting profiles. And it would be great if grads reach out and ask because most people want to help. So this is a great time for me to share that we actually have an online networking platform exclusively for York alumni and students. Called Connecting You, and one of my colleagues will put some information in the chat for that so that you can see how to sign up. And it is a place where people can go online and put a profile on and say, I'm a mentor and I'm looking to connect with someone, or you can say, I'd like to be a mentee and I'd love to be mentored, or you can do both for anyone who, as you say, can have those mutually beneficial opportunities. As well as we offer a number of networking events at York, which is for alumni, which are often for social connections, but often for networking and professional connections, and to keep you connected to your alma mater, but also have you connect with other professionals or people with similar interests. So always encourage everyone to read their newsletters and check out our emails because we offer quite a few of those. What would you say are maybe some tactics to use if you're joining a York alumni network?
I'm so glad that this has come up, because I meant to mention something similar to this earlier, and that is that if you have a warm contact, there's nothing better than that, right? So if you people love their alma mater. People love there's things that people like. If I can walk up to somebody, or somebody walks up to me and they said, Marie, I was in the same program that you were as an undergrad, and I had did you have this prof? Fantastic. Right now, you're I love you. I'm so warm to you. I want to help you. I understand the path you've been on. I see myself in that moment. So it is. If you have you don't even have to be introduced to me. If you know my background and come up to me and say X, it's so meaningful, right? So it's such a good entry. So I think that's definitely a benefit of these alumni networks, of alumni databases, of alumni programs. But now you've got the extra layer. So now if you are engaging within the alumni program, the York alumni program, where alumni have put their hand up and said, I am willing to help. So now not only do you have the York connection, but you also have somebody who has already said that they want to be helpful. So do not shy away from that, right? That is just an opportunity waiting to be had. The other thing I will say about this is absolutely you're aiming to make connections with people who are established in their careers, who have opportunities to give you. But networking and making connections starts when you're in your classrooms and in your projects, right? The closest connections I have now are the people I went to school with, the people who were at one point in time just starting out just like me. So do not underestimate the value of those connections for future career. So you're building a network for now. You're also building connections for later, because these diverse and different types of connections will be useful to you throughout your career. So like there's mentors certainly, but there's also peers. Peers are
Yeah,
are so very helpful.
absolutely. Yeah, I can tell you did you have this prof question? That's a great one. And often at the in-person things that come up a lot at in-person networking events are memories of the bus circle and whether or not you got to take the subway to York,
Yeah, yeah,
and geese and things like that about that were special
yeah.
to campus. So
Did you
those
pay the
are
levy for the new student center? Like like the
exactly exactly great things that are shared. Um, we're getting close to wrapping up now, but could you share an example with us of a time when you learned something important, perhaps at work, not through formal feedback, but through a relationship or informal interaction with a colleague? So back to your comment about how much you can learn
Yeah.
through those casual interactions.
Honestly, I have learned so much from colleagues and from those informal interactions, just in terms of, how to do the various things. So how to be a useful committee member, how to watching my colleagues sit on committees and what they say and how they say things. I can think about the most profound example would likely be learning how to teach and how to give a presentation. I can remember thinking, watching different people, and two people in particular who were really the models for me, watching them and thinking, gosh, that's such a good technique, or that's such a good, and I could do that. Yeah, I could do that. And it's not because, so they weren't like me. They didn't have the same background as me. They didn't look like me. Like often we think of role like that they need to, have the same kind of personality or approach to life as you do now. These are just people who had these really skillful techniques where I was able to just observe them and go, I can still hear this one instructor's voice in my head at various moments in time as I'm teaching. I can hear the way he would say it. Then I filter it to how I would say it, and I say something else. So that's learning through observation. We learn so much through observation. And I've learned a ton from my peers and colleagues just by watching them.
That's great. Great advice. And funny that you say that. I learned about weak ties when I was studying in school. And I remember my prof saying the weak ties, your strong ties get you through in tough times. Those are your people, and your weak ties get you ahead. And that
Yeah.
phrase has always stayed with me, and I can hear my prof's voice saying that.
Yeah. Yeah. Great.
Um, I think that we are pretty much wrapped up with our questions. So thank you everybody for a great discussion, but thank you very much to you, Dr. Budworth, for being with us today and having such an engaging, interesting conversation with a lot of tangible takeaways for everyone. And with
Thank
that,
you.
I'll let you say goodbye, and you can turn off your video as I wrap up with everybody. Thanks
Okay.
again.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for the invitation, and thank you, everybody. If anybody's in the room who I've seen in class or I've seen at some, it's good to see you again. I'm sorry I didn't actually get to see you, but I was hopeful that somebody in the space was somebody that that I had the pleasure of spending some time with. So glad you're here. Glad everybody's here. Thanks.
Thanks very much. Okay, so a couple of things before we let you go. A recording of the video will be posted on our YouTube channel, and my colleague will put the link in the chat again. We do have one more poll for our audience before we depart, and that is, how would you rate your knowledge of today's topic following the discussion? So that should pop up on your screen right now. Just one second. Okay, thank you for joining us today. Scholars Hub will be back on Wednesday, October 8th, featuring Sue Jackman, MBA from '05, a professor of marketing communications at Schulich School of Business and executive vice president, marketing and growth at Citizen Relations. And she will present the narrative shift, building a brand that resonates. Also, please do keep an eye out in your inbox for an invitation to our most exciting event of the year, the York U Alumni Awards. This event recognizes outstanding alumni who have achieved the extraordinary and are working to write the future by creating positive change in their fields. This year's event is taking place at the TIFF Lightbox downtown Toronto on November 6th. And if you're in the GTA, we do hope that you're able to join us. It's a very fun night. I already mentioned that we do have a wonderful networking platform called Connecting You. It harnesses the diverse experiences and expertise of our alumni to offer mentoring and networking opportunities for alumni and students. Member-driven connections allow you to find mentors, mentees, to network, and interest groups based on what matters most to you. It could be education, professional, or personal experience. And my colleague already put that in the chat for you. So please do check it out. And we look forward to seeing you at our next Scholars Hub at Home session. Thank you everybody again for attending today and for a really engaging chat. And with that, we will say goodbye.